portion of the lobe of the right ear was gone. On the second finger of the left hand was a ring, a shield-shaped bloodstone set in gold, with a monogram that might have been either BK or BL. On the third finger of the right hand was a silver ring in the shape of a coiled cobra, much worn and tarnished. Gunga Dass deposited a handful of trifles he had picked out of the burrow at my feet, and, covering the face of the body with my handkerchief, I turned to examine these. I give the full list in the hope that it may lead to the identification of the unfortunate man. 1. Bowl of a briarwood pipe, serrated at the edge, much worn and blackened, bound with string at the crew. 2. Two patent lever keys, wards of both broken. 3. Tortoise-shell-handled penknife, silver or nickel, nameplate marked with monogram BK. 4. Envelope postmarked undecipherable, bearing a Victorian stamp, addressed to Miss Mon, rest illegible, Ham, N.T. 5. Imitation crocodile skin notebook with pencil, first 45 pages blank, 4 1/2 illegible, 15 others filled with private memoranda relating chiefly to 3 persons: a Mrs. L. Singleton, abbreviated several times to Lot Single; Mrs. S. May; and Garmison, referred to in places as Jerry or Jack. 6. Handle of a small-sized hunting knife, blade snapped short, buck's horn, diamond cut, with swivel and ring on the butt, fragment of cotton cord attached. It must not be supposed that I inventoried all of these things on the spot as fully as I have here written them down. The notebook first attracted my attention, and I put it in my pocket with a view to studying it later on. The rest of the articles I conveyed to my burrow for safety's sake, and there, being a methodical man, I inventoried them. I then returned to the corpse and ordered Gunga Dass to help me carry it out to the river front. While we were engaged in this, the exploded shell of an old brown cartridge dropped out of one of the pockets and rolled at my feet. Gunga Dass had not seen it, and I fell to thinking that a man does not carry exploded cartridge cases, especially Browns, which will not bear loading twice, about with him when shooting. In other words, that cartridge case had been fired inside the crater. Consequently, there must be a gun somewhere. I was on the verge of asking Gunga Dass, but checked myself, knowing that he would lie. We laid the body down on the edge of the quicksand by the tussocks. It was my intention to push it out and let it be swallowed up, the only possible mode of burial that I could think of. I ordered Gunga Dass to go away. Then I gingerly put the corpse out on the quicksand. In doing so, it was lying face downward. I tore the frail and rotten khaki shooting coat open, disclosing a hideous cavity in the back. I have already told you that the dry sand had, as it were, mummified the body. A moment's glance showed that the gaping hole had been caused by a gunshot wound. The gun must have been fired with the muzzle almost touching the back. The shooting coat, being intact, had been drawn over the body after death, which must have been instantaneous. The secret of the poor wretch's death was plain to me in a flash. Someone of the crater, presumably Gunga Dass, must have shot him with his own gun, the gun that fitted the brown cartridges. He had never attempted to escape in the face of the rifle fire from the boat. I pushed the corpse out hastily, and saw it sink from sight, literally in a few seconds. I shuddered as I watched. In a dazed, half-conscious way, I turned to peruse the notebook. A stained and discolored slip of paper had been inserted between the binding and the back, and dropped out as I opened the pages. This is what it contained: 4 out from Crow Clump, 3 left, 9 out, 2 right, 3 back, 2 left, 14 out, 2 left, 7 out, 1 left, 9 back, 2 right, 6 back, 4 right, 7 back. The paper had been burned and charred at the edges. What it meant I could not understand. I sat down on the dried bents, turning it over and over between my fingers, until I was aware of Gunga Dass standing immediately behind me with glowing eyes and outstretched hands. "Have you got it?" he panted. "Will you not let me look at it also? I swear that I will return it." "Got what? Return what?" I asked. "That which you have in your hands. It will help us both." He stretched out his long bird-like talons, trembling with eagerness. "I could never find it," he continued. He had secreted it about his person, therefore I shot him, but nevertheless I was unable to obtain it." Gunga Dass had quite forgotten his little fiction about the rifle bullet. I received the information perfectly calmly. Morality is blunted by consorting with the dead who are alive. "What on earth are you raving about? What is it you want me to give you?" "The piece of paper in the notebook. It will help us both. Oh, you fool, you fool! Can you not see what it will do for us? We shall escape!" His voice rose almost to a scream, and he danced with excitement before me. I own I was moved at the chance of my getting away. "Don't skip. Explain yourself. Do you mean to say that this slip of paper will help us? What does it mean?" "Read it aloud. Read it aloud. I beg and I pray you to read it aloud." I did so. Gunga Dass listened delightfully, and drew an irregular line in the sand with his fingers. "See now! It was the length of his gun barrels without the stock. I have those barrels, 4 gun barrels, out from the place where I caught crows. Straight out, do you follow me? Then 3 left. Ah, how well I remember when that man worked it out night after night. Then 9 out, and so on. Out is always straight before you across the quicksand. He told me so before I killed him." "But if you knew all this, why didn't you get out before?" "I did not know it. He told me that he was working it out a year and a half ago, and how he was working it out night after night when the boat had gone away, and he could get out near the quicksand safely. Then he said that we would get away together. But I was afraid that he would leave me behind one night when he had worked it all out, and so I shot him. Besides, it is not advisable that the men who once get in here should escape. Only I, and I am a Brahmin." The prospect of escape had brought Gunga Dass's caste back to him. He stood up, walked about, and gesticulated violently. Eventually I managed to make him talk soberly, and he told me how this Englishman had spent 6 months, night after night, in exploring inch by inch the passage across the quicksand; how he had declared it to be simplicity itself up to within about 20 yards of the river bank after turning the flank of the left horn of the horseshoe. This much he had evidently not completed when Gunga Dass shot him with his own gun. In my frenzy of delight at the possibilities of escape, I recollect shaking hands effusively with Gunga Dass, after we had decided that we were to make an attempt to get away that very night. It was weary work waiting throughout the afternoon. About 10 o'clock, as far as I could judge, when the moon had just risen above the lip of the crater, Gunga Dass made a move for his burrow to bring out the gun barrels, whereby to measure our path. All the other wretched inhabitants had retired to their lairs long ago. The guardian boat drifted downstream some hours before, and we were utterly alone by the crow clump. Gunga Dass, while carrying the gun barrels, let slip the piece of paper which was to be our guide. I stooped down hastily to recover it, and as I did so I was aware that the diabolical Brahmin was aiming a violent blow at the back of my head with the gun barrels. It was too late to turn round. I must have received the blow somewhere on the nape of my neck. 100,000 fiery stars danced before my eyes, and I fell forwards, senseless, at the edge of the quicksand. When I recovered consciousness, the moon was going down, and I was sensible of intolerable pain in the back of my head. Gunga Dass had disappeared, and my mouth was full of blood. I lay down again, and prayed that I might die without more ado. Then the unreasoning fury which I had before mentioned laid hold upon me, and I staggered inland toward the walls of the crater. It seemed that someone was calling to me in a whisper, "Sahib! Sahib! Sahib!" exactly as my bearer used to call me in the morning. I fancied that I was delirious until a handful of sand fell at my feet. Then I looked up and saw a head peering down into the amphitheater. The head of Danu, my dog boy, who attended to my collies. As soon as he had attracted my attention, he held up his hand and showed a rope. I motioned, staggering to and fro for a while, that he should throw it down. It was a couple of leather punka ropes knotted together with a loop at one end. I slipped the loop over my head and under my arms, heard Danu urge something forward, was conscious that I was being dragged face downward up the steep sand slope, and the next instant found myself choked and half fainting on the sand hills overlooking the crater. Danu, with his face ashy gray in the moonlight, implored me not to stay, but to get back to my tent at once. It seems that he had tracked Pornic's footprints 14 miles across the sands to the crater, had returned and told my servants, who flatly refused to meddle with anyone, white or black, once fallen into the hideous